Good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th Let's Talk Life podcast with Ben. And today we've got TJ on, who, as we'll go through the podcast, will describe kind of how I got to know TJ's music and kind of we'll go through some questions as well. So just as an introduction, would you like to introduce yourself, TJ, and kind of go through what you're known for and so on like that?
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Ben, thanks for having me on. My name's TJ Horansky. I live in Chicago, Illinois. Yeah, I'm a musician. I play in a band called Sleep on It. I have a new acoustic project called Oslo, and do some producing and mixing. And I like music, and that's why we're here.
Amazing. So I was thinking of kicking it off with kind of the impact of the situation we're in at the moment, because it'll be slightly different for everyone. And I'm wondering kind of with the lockdowns and COVID and stuff, how that's affected your kind of day-to-day life.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely turned it upside down, like it has for a lot of people, especially coming from the music world, and just a lot of things that were sort of taken for granted, and just like the normal process of touring and playing shows and being connected with people. And it's just completely turned it on its head. I think, for some people, lockdown was a bit more of like a natural transition depending on career or whatever field you're in. But for anything creative, especially music, so much of all of it is generated by personal connection and shows and fans. And day to day has really changed a lot. But we're about a year into it now, so it's become more like, okay, yeah, this is what it is, but it doesn't make it easier necessarily.
Yeah, I was going to say that now it's not normal, but we're kind of used to some of the things that, like in the UK, we're in like a third lockdown here. So now it's a natural, have I got my mask when I'm going to like the shops, or nothing's open, so it's all just takeaways and stuff. So it will be weird when things are kind of more normal, that we can get out and about. But I was kind of wondering, because obviously we've all had a lot of time stuck inside. Is there any TV shows or movies that you've been watching throughout that you'd recommend to someone?
Yeah, well, I just got finished watching the new season of Fargo. It's a really great show. I think it's like the fourth season, and I've loved all the seasons. Just great writing, and it's like styled a lot after the movie Fargo, the Coen brothers. So if you like the movie, the show is awesome, and each season is a different story, so you can kind of start on whatever season. My girlfriend and I also got super into WandaVision, which we just finished. Now we just started the new Marvel show, the Falcon and Winter Soldier. So we've been on a super big like MCU kick. Like, we've seen all the movies, but then we're like, wait, how did this happen again? And we have to like go back and rewatch all the movies. But it's great because it's like a whole universe, and you can really like dive into it.
Yeah, amazing. The Disney Plus came out at probably the right time for us in the UK, so it was like everything's just there. So I went through them all as well, and like you say, the WandaVision was great, and everything that's coming out with that. And I was thinking of kind of like, I've just got out of self-isolation for 10 days. Now, I was wondering if you had any ideas for someone who was maybe stuck in kind of self-isolation, anything that might keep their mind occupied? Because obviously you kind of write music and stuff, don't you? And you've got the producing side, but is there any maybe tips that you could give someone to keep them kind of sane?
Yeah, definitely. I think something that isn't being like talked about a lot with creatives, and especially musicians and writers, that it's hard to feel inspired right now, and it's hard to have like a drive of like, I'm gonna sit down and do this every day or like a couple of times a week. Like, at least for me, there's been times where I'm just like, I feel no motivation to do this thing that I love doing. And it's not that I don't want to do it anymore, but it's just, this whole thing has been so mentally draining that I just think there has to be some like self-forgiveness with not feeling super inspired all the time, or just not feeling super productive. all the time. But as far as like getting through lockdown and keeping yourself occupied and staying creative, I mean, like for me, when lockdown started last year, early last summer, I'd always wanted to get more into producing and recording and mixing,
Yeah.
but it was always like we were on tour so much and there's just other stuff going on. So for me, it was like, okay, I want to learn this skill and I have some time. So I just like dove in, and I call it YouTube University, where I just watch as many YouTube videos as I can and like found some like legit YouTube channels of like producers and stuff, and just dove into it. And I think that can be applied for like learning most things. Like you want to learn how to play guitar, you want to learn how to play piano, or I don't know, whatever. There is a lot of resources out there right
Yeah.
now to like spend the time, watch videos, find like legitimate people who know what they're doing, um, and talking about it. I think that's like a positive thing right now. Is anything you want to learn, there are avenues and like
Yeah.
channels and teachers out there to
Yeah, yeah,
teach.
amazing. Like you're saying, and with yourself, um, obviously we'll go into kind of your producing side of things now and your kind of new adventure. But even before then, I know that you're always open to kind of doing tutorials of songs from Sleep on it on YouTube anyway. And like
Mhm.
you say, as soon as you find kind of a channel and a direction, like with this podcast, I've only been doing it kind of 2 months, but it's something that just keeps your mind kind of ticking and flowing. So as soon as you find something out that you've got kind of an interest for, and that can lead to a bit more positivity in the norm. But I was wondering, as a kind of an upbringing and stuff, so if you could just go through kind of where you were born, and because you're based in Chicago now, aren't you? But if you could go through kind of where you were born, and as a younger kind of person, what was your ideal like career and job wise when you were younger?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, which is like 5 or 6 hours from Chicago, which I feel like in the States is not very far, but and in the UK, in like England and the UK, like somewhere that's 6 hours away is like
The
the
bottom.
complete other side of the country. Um, but yeah, so I grew up in Cleveland, and um, I feel like I had a fairly typical, normal, like suburban upbringing, and my family's great, my parents are great, and I feel super lucky for that. But when I was in high school and like starting to play in bands and stuff, I had my few friends who were like into the same type of music, and one of my best friends, we would just make music together. But I felt like sort of like the black sheep a little bit. I just didn't really super fit into like my high school and like sort of the whole like community. I never felt like ostracized or anything. It was just I just felt different. Um, and so after high school, I knew I wanted to like branch out and go to like be in a bigger city, be around more musicians and more artists. And I always, I mean, it's like pretty cliche, but like I, it was always, how am I going to be a musician? And that was it. It was never like, wow, if I could do that, that would be great. It's just like, I need to do that. How, how do I make this work?
Yeah.
And that just sort of I don't really fully understand where it came from or where it still comes from. But it just once it clicked, it was just like that's I got to find a way to do this in some capacity. Um, so I moved to Chicago when I was 18 to go to college here in the city. I went to DePaul University in the city, and that was like my first foray into a larger city and a larger community. And I started meeting musicians and more like-minded people. So even though I'm not from Chicago, I feel very much like a home connection here. It really like I've done most of my growing here. Um, so I feel very connected to the city for that reason. And it afforded me a lot of opportunities to meet a lot of people. And there's so many venues and so many, great artists that come out of here. which makes it even more difficult to see right now how much everybody's struggling and how these venues are struggling. Um, but yeah, so that was sort of my like beginning of my journey from where I grew up and moving out here, and I've been here ever since.
Amazing. And I was trying to think towards, like, obviously when you're moving somewhere it can be quite difficult, but like you say, when you found all those kind of ventures that you really enjoy and do, and I guess sometimes that might help the situation when you're so far away, because obviously, like you say, for 6 hours for you that's like a bit of the country, but for me that'd be like literally the bottom of England. So like you
Mhm.
say, getting into things you enjoyed, and I'm wondering, when you moved to kind of Chicago, did you feel like you fit in a bit more than what you did maybe when you were in your suburban kind of your college days and your school days for high school?
Yeah, I definitely did almost immediately. DePaul is like DePaul's great because it's an incredibly diverse student population. So that was something that I really sought out, and I wanted to be a part of like a really diverse community. And that, I've always growing up loved traveling. I've always really enjoyed meeting new people and experiencing different cultures. So moving to Chicago, and like especially at DePaul, it was meeting a lot of people from completely different backgrounds, but like finding that common ground. And a lot of times it was over music or something else. So that was really important for me, and that was something that I really valued about starting school here in Chicago.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm wondering, just for anyone who's a new listener, obviously, I known you from both, obviously, Goodnight City Lights and Sleep on It, so I kind of know the genre of your music. But what kind of, and obviously you've got your new adventure now, so I'm wondering, what kind of genre would you say that you're maybe from in the music you produce?
Yeah, so I'm really like I guess my bread and butter would be like the pop punk, pop rock stuff, and that was it was just the genre that clicked with me growing up, and really like I call it my like musical DNA. Not a lot of people in my family like really played music, but they all loved music. So growing up, my mom listened to a lot of like Madonna and like 80s pop and stuff, and that was cool. But then like so many people my age discovered Blink 182, and it just that just sort of clicked with me, and that's when I was like, I want to play guitar, I want to play in a band. So then it was discovering all these other bands that I loved, like the Yellow Card and um, I don't know, bands like that.
Yeah,
It all just like really started clicking. So the way that I like learned to write music and construct like compose songs was very much influenced by that vein of artists, um, which I still enjoy, like a lot of that. I still listen to that genre, but it was, obviously I've discovered other artists and really like discovered other genres that I've wanted to explore. Um, so with the new project, it's very like indie, acoustic, sort of like Death Cab, Bon Iver type stuff has always been like also what I listen to the most. So it's something, a style and a sound that I wanted to explore a little bit more.
yeah, yeah. So for anyone that's not listening, if you were like you say, the new music that you've produced, it's very like, I feel like the lyrics hit you a bit more because it is an acoustic tune, so you really listen to each lyric, where I feel like maybe with a pop punk song you remember the chorus, and the chorus sometimes stands out the most. And I'm wondering, just as a process for someone who maybe has never produced music, or how would you go about it for yourself? So do you do the, like when I spoke to another band, 2 Year Break, they said they did kind of the lyrics, if they like think of a chorus, and they'll do like a kind of a melody and the drums. How do you go about producing yours?
Yeah, so I guess like there's no like one way that I do it, but the most common way is I just have like a notes app on my phone,
Yeah.
where if I think of like just a single line, or like even just literally just a word, here word, I'm like, that's a cool word. There's some sort of like feeling that you get hearing that word, not even just what it means, but the sound of it, like the diction.
Yeah.
I'll just get inspired by like even just a single word, and then from there, I'll pick up a guitar and start noodling around, and then I'll start like humming a melody in my head. So it's usually like melody first, and then I go through like my notes, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, what's the vibe of this song? What sort of lyrics would match? And then I'll just start putting these like phrases that I have written in my phone to this melody that I'm humming.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, it's all kind of comes, I write it all together at the same time. And a lot of artists will write the music first and then go and put melody. But for me, it's like it has to come together at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. And I'm wondering, kind of from the aspect of when I was looking at kind of pop punk bands, I felt like maybe music videos and stuff were really like maybe falling away from what they were maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I'm wondering from your like point of view, did you enjoy doing the music videos of like Sleep On It? Was that something you really got into, or have you maybe been someone who might have shied away from stuff like that in the past?
Yeah, I enjoyed the music videos for sure. I mean, um, I think some of like the other guys got more into the videos than I did, but I think they're important in like maintaining sort of like the vibe and your brand, I guess. So yeah, I think it. I've always been more focused on like the music side of things, and I was always like involved in like concepts for the music video, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't like my thing. I enjoyed sort of giving like creative direction, like here's what the song is about, here how we could tie it together. And I feel like now like music videos are important, but it's almost like condensed. It's almost like um feels like TikTok is really like the bigger medium now, where you don't even need to have like this 3 minute long super conceptual thing. Like if you can nail the concept in like 15 seconds,
Yeah.
and have something that just like grabs somebody on TikTok, that's kind of where we're at right now.
It is. I always felt like with a music video, the thing I enjoyed the most was you get to see what the band members kind of the presence and what they look like, as to such if I went on Spotify and I kind of just listened to a song, and like you never kind of get the understanding of that. But that's what I really enjoyed. And when I was doing some, well, it wasn't digging, but I reminded myself of, obviously I've got in here 2014. You used to do some interviews for APTV. And I'm
Oh,
and I was watching a couple of them today again. I was wondering, is this something that you enjoy doing, like interviewing people and being in front of the camera?
wow. Yeah, you're digging deep. That's funny. Yeah, I always, yeah, I feel like I enjoyed the interviews and coming up with questions and talking to people. I always felt like for some reason weirdly uncomfortable like being on camera interviewing people. It, for, but it's weird because I don't mind being on camera being interviewed. It's more like being on camera interviewing for somebody for some reason that was always kind of weird for me. Um, but it was cool. It was a cool experience, and I got to like talk and meet with a lot of like my favorite musicians, and I did some stuff on camera. I did some stuff like written interviews, and I remember one of the bigger ones that I did was I interviewed Jeremy from A Day to Remember, and it was right when they were like coming back after their lawsuit, and it was right before Common Courtesy came out, and the interview just like explode was just massive on the AP website, and that was cool. That was a cool feeling, and being able to, I guess, like talk to somebody on that human level and relate to where they're coming from. So I think it's like it's made me like more conscious being somebody who's interviewed because I know what it's like on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know how I do get nervous for these. Even like I've done a couple with my friends. I don't know. There's just something about, with it being on camera and stuff. I'm a bit nervous, and obviously with like yourself, and I did a couple with other bands. It's like I've listened to you for like your bands for like 5 or 6 years, and it's a bit like, well, like I'm doing a Zoom call. It's like I don't know, but then once you do them, it's okay. It's just kind of that initial like jumping in. And I
Mm.
was thinking of like, how does it make you feel knowing that people kind of listen to your music? Is it kind of surreal feeling?
It's the best feeling. I mean, it's the reason that you keep doing it, and why you love doing it. And it just, yeah, it makes it's so fulfilling. I don't know how else to describe it. It's really humbling, because I just like my goal when I first started writing music and being in bands and stuff was just like, I want to be for somebody else what this band was for me, and I know how powerful that is. And it was never like, oh, I'm as good as these artists or this bands, but it's just like, I'm just gonna do what I can with like my abilities and the way that I make music. And if it can connect with people the way that like this other band I listened to connected with me growing up, it's like, that's so powerful, because that it like changes you as a person. Like I feel changed by the artists that I grew up listening to, that just influenced me, not as just a musician, but as a person.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
any
can imagine it. And it's amazing what songs do to you when you've listened to a song and like maybe 2 years later or something like that, it hits slightly different where it's still that song. And like the lyrics have maybe a different meaning, but you know, at that time you first listened to it, it's something that you can kind of reminisce with. And
Mhm.
it was just like one of those questions where when I ask people, it's like, it's amazing that you've kind of been on the other side and you've listened to a band and there's people around the world listening to you. And it's just like you say, it'll be a really fulfilling, rewarding feeling and amazing for you as a person. And I was thinking of kind of when you're releasing a new song, do you have any nerves or is it all kind of excitement?
Yeah, definitely nerves, and not more so it's just like it's almost a relief, because most times when you put out a song, it's something that's been in my brain for months or sometimes years at that point. You're just like, ah, finally, like other people can hear this thing that's been in my brain for so long. So it's really almost just like relief. But I've always felt as soon as I put out a new song, I'm just like, it's so relieving for other people to hear it and they want to hear it and talk about it. But it's like my mind is already on to the next thing by the time something comes out, because I've been living with it for however long, usually months,
Yeah.
sometimes years. Like the first Oslo song I just put out was I've had that song written for a couple of years, and it was something that like I brought to the band, and for some reason it just never felt like they're like, this is a great song, but it didn't just it felt like it didn't work for that specific project, which is cool. And I think it worked out because it always felt like really personal. So to finally like put that song out, I just wanted it to exist and for people to hear it, because it had been with me for so long and in my brain for so long. It's a relief.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, leading on to that new project, is it kind of a long-term project that you want to release an album with? Have you got other songs that you've already wrote? What kind of situation are you with that?
Yeah, I to be honest, I don't have like a ton of crazy expectations with it, but it's I'm just glad to have an outlet right now, to like be creative and like keep writing. And my goal is to put out an album, like a full length album this year. I already have probably like 6 to 7 full songs written and a couple more ideas. Um, Again, going back to like other influences and stuff, um, just listening to a lot of like more indie style stuff. Um, I've written songs in that vein for a long time, and even more so recently. So now it's like it's just cool to have like a project to like focus my creative energy towards, and try out some different sounds and stuff. And right, everything is still so up in the air with music and the world at large. So it's hard to like be like, oh yeah, this is my plan with this. But it's more so just nice to continue to create and write songs, which is all it's what I love doing the most more than anything.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just something that can keep you busy, and obviously you've done it for so long now that when you've got something on your mind that you can just write it down, and now you've got an outlet with something set up that you can post something, and from the I can see from the response that people are really liking it, and are you happy with kind of what the response has been?
Oh yeah, definitely. It feels like people really enjoy it and connects. And I wanted to. The other thing too is like with all these songs that I'm writing, I've gotten to a point where it's like I could just write and record and mix and do everything right here myself and just put it out. Like, it's kind of nice in that way that it's just me and I can kind of do it at my own pace and from start to finish, I
Yeah.
can I can put out songs when I want to and have them sound however I want to. So having like the songwriting ability, but now also having like a bit more of like the technical side of like I know I can figure out how to like mix it and make it sound good and have it like, master it to a level. And I'm not, a pro at all this stuff, but that's what I've been working on mostly for the past few months. So now it's getting to a point where it's like the freedom to, from start to finish, be in control of the project,
Yeah.
is really cool. And so with that song and with like this whole vibe for the new project is I wanted to keep it like fairly raw, not polished sounding. But so I recorded the song like in my parents' basement, the house I grew up in, with just like an SM57, which is like $100 mic, and I wanted to like keep that sort of like raw feeling. And then, like you could hear the ambience of like the room, and you could hear like a door close in the background. Beginning of the song, I kick like a bag of pretzels that's on the ground, and I wanted to keep all that stuff in because I wanted it to have that sort of like raw feeling to it. And like you were saying this earlier, I think it just lends itself to like focus on the words that are being sung more than the music.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like if you could listen to it, you could feel like it was in the same room, as if you just picked up the guitar and started singing in like the living room or the dining room. And yeah, it has that feel where every kind of lyric and sentence has the meaning. Because I feel like sometimes you get lost in things when there's either like a nice lyric and then maybe a guitar solo for like 15 seconds or the drums hitting hard. And I feel like with that, it's just something where if you really want to kind of shut off or you've had like a long day, you can just listen to the lyrics and they'll have different meanings for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of thinking of, obviously, you've toured quite a bit. And I was wondering, I've got noted down kind of, is there any experiences that you enjoyed most about touring?
Yeah, I mean, it was always the shows were always the best part. And even the days where it was like really difficult, you play the show and you're just like, you know, that's why I do it. And I miss that connection for sure. Um, yeah, I love traveling and I always have. And I think like touring affords the opportunity to see all like the nooks and crannies of the country and the world and wherever you are that most people never get to see, and meet people that most people never get to meet. And that's a beautiful thing in my opinion. So I love that, and the shows. There's a lot of like difficult parts of touring, like mentally difficult. And for me, I'm not like a super social extroverted person. So like that was always something to wrestle with, was just being surrounded by people so much. Um, so there's a lot of give and take, but yeah, it's a cliche answer, but the shows, like hands down,
Yeah,
seeing people singing the words and like crowd surfing and doing all this shit, that's
yeah.
it's hard to compare.
Yeah, and I was going to say, have you got any maybe favorite cities, states, or countries that you've visited that really stand out? If, like, say, you were going to think of a dream tour, which places would you think you'd really want to visit again?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get back to the UK. We played Slam Dunk a few years ago. It'd be cool to play it in the UK, and I'd really love to like tour the rest of Europe. As far as like best places we've played, like it's Boston is the best place for us. Chicago, obviously, New York, like the East Coast and Midwest, were just always great shows. So, and I would also really love to play in Japan at some point. That's like my dream country to play in.
Yeah, it's surprising that there's a lot of people who's been on here have said Japan as well. So it must be like a bucket list kind of ticky off place that people want to do. And
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, obviously you set up your workshop and stuff, but as an idea of kind of going forward, has this been something that you've always been interested in, kind of maybe kind of collabing with people and teaching people maybe how to play a song or an instrument?
Yeah, I love it, and I always have. Um, so the workshop has been cool because it's like I've been able to um, work on other projects with other artists and different styles that I wouldn't normally do, but I love collaborating and I love like teaching. So that's been super cool to like not only hone my skills, but to like connect with somebody else on their project. Um, Coming at it from like an artist standpoint, it's, I know how attached like you can get to a song. So it's been kind of cool to be like an objective voice in an instance, like here's what works about this song, here's what doesn't work. Because I've been on the other side of it and you get kind of like a little blinded by your own like attachment or demoitis or whatever it is. But yeah, I love it. When I grew up, my mom ran like an in-home daycare, and she babysat these two boys who loved music and wanted to like play rock music. And so I would like babysit them and teach them how to play guitar and stuff like that. So from pretty early on, that was like, that's really fulfilling. I want to do more of that.
Yeah.
So that's been a cool to do with the workshop.
Yeah, and like I say, it's only gonna kind of, it'll help you in the future as well when you're kind of dipping into these different sounds, that you've got kind of the experiences from other people that you've spoke to. And
Mhm.
I've kind of got here when I've been recording that, I've kind of just got a bit of discussion. So I'll go through. I know everyone who listens to this will hear the same story, so I'll quickly go through it. But basically, I set up this podcast kind of to speak to kind of inspirational individuals and people in like bands and people who I would kind of know, but people who I normally don't really like maybe listen to or weren't familiar with. And like I say, and the main part of it was kind of to speak about kind of mental health as well, because it has a big effect on everyone's lives, especially in this moment in time where we're really kind of isolated. And basically, to cut the long story short, I've struggled for anxiety for about 10 years or something like that. I'm 22 now, so it was probably about 12 or 13. And basically I was losing my hair the last 5 years. And it was kind of like the biggest thing in the world of, worrying and comparing and stuff like that. And basically I reached out to the YouTube channel, it's Bald Cafe. And basically it gets people on who have had the same struggles, and it doesn't make you feel alone. And I kind of thought like music has a big effect of that as well. As people listen to it, they'll have different takes on the lyrics, and everyone is different. And I use kind of the example of, if you're on a beach with 100 people and I've got one worry, 99 other people have other worries as well, but you don't really consider them because you're worrying about yourself. And I was kind of wondering around kind of situations in mental health. Obviously, you don't have to go into detail, but is there been any times that you might have struggled, and kind of how did you deal with them?
Yeah, dude, every day. Yeah, a lot. Um, yeah, I definitely have dealt with like anxiety, and especially recently just with the quarantine, like isolation, like depression, just sort of like I've always dealt with anxiety too, but like even darker than I've experienced before. And always having like um, I don't know, like shows to go to or like stuff to do has always been helpful. So it's been extra hard recently. And yeah, it's something that I've also dealt with, and I think most people do to like differing degrees. Um, so writing and like making music has always helped, but sometimes I've just had to like force myself to like go outside even, or just like go on a walk or like a bike ride when I don't want to, and like somehow still finding like inspiration and motivation to make music even when I feel like I don't want to, or what's the point. So it's something that I don't know, I think most musicians or songwriters you know also like struggle with. And yeah, there's no, I don't know, there's no like right or wrong answer. It's just different for everybody. But I think your point of like, or your metaphor of being on a beach and
Yeah.
everybody else has their own problems too, I think that's really important to be conscious of, that everybody is going through their own shit that you just don't know about. um I think if you're conscious of that all the time, I think it just makes you a better human and more thoughtful. And I hope that we all come out of this being a bit more thoughtful, um, because all of our like personal struggles are super valid. But the world doesn't revolve around one person. Everybody is going through their own shit. So I
Yeah.
really, really think that, I really hope that that's something we can take away coming out of this. Is just being a little more thoughtful towards everybody around us.
Yeah, I was gonna say with like being stuck inside and stuff like that, I feel like we really attach ourselves now to long-term goals, but I feel like if you make a little step around anything, that it can really help your daily mood. Like you say, even going for a walk, that's better even for half an hour than just sitting in your bedroom, or not moving on the sofa. And it's like these little things will kind of add up, and they will help. Maybe it might only be 10%, but it's 10% more than what it would have been if you didn't do anything.
Mhm.
And I was just, it's really interesting because I feel like things are spoken about enough, but a lot of things are like you feel like there's one thing that's higher and more important than another, but it's how everyone takes it. So like when I was like losing my hair, people were like, "Oh, what does it matter? It's only hair." But when it's something that you've worried about for like 5 to 6 years, it's not just hair. And like it's just like anything. Like I spoke to someone on here, and he said that he was really self-conscious about when he goes to the beach and he takes his top off. And we were just talking about, it's funny because you're worried about someone walking past you and you don't know them and you'll never see them again, but in your head kind of their opinion is the most important thing. And it's funny because if that is someone and they take the mick or they make jokes, it's really not worth your time or hassle worrying about something like that, because they're not really the person to be hanging around. And I'm just kind of thinking, do you kind of have any advice for anyone maybe struggling, and what's kind of helped you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a really great point to bring up, is like this like looking for validation or approval from others, even people that you don't even know, that you've never met in your life. And I am a victim of that as well, for sure. And I think social media has only like exacerbated that. And I think quarantine has just even more so this like search for like approval and validation. I think it's super normal to feel that way, because in our minds we're like, I think a lot of us are consciously aware of like it's ridiculous, but it's like it's hard to like get past that still, even if we know it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
um and even like with the hair thing, like I've gone through that too. I think it's like super normal for like a lot of guys to go through it, and but it's still this like like self-conscious of it. It's super valid even when we know that we're being like um unreasonable or like way too hard on ourselves. So I
Yeah.
think there has to be an amount of like self-forgiveness with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I agree. It's kind of like you've got to accept it first before you can really make other people's judgments being the main thing. You've got to really address the situation, and like you say, if it's such a big deal and someone keeps bringing something up, then just disregard that, because if you're seeking approval from someone who maybe you speak to once a month on Instagram and they haven't liked your post, this is kind of like, it's not the end of the world. And at the end of the day, if you're happy, it's their loss. If you're happy,
Yeah.
you don't want their opinion of you being when you're miserable and worried. They want to remember you when you're smiling and being happy. And I just think it's going to be amazing when we can get out and about, because I feel like it's been a really big learning experience for people as well. And it's really opened my eyes to speak about things more. Whereas before I was so quiet. I was like you, like when I was in school, I wasn't like an outcast, but I felt like I couldn't really talk about the music that I liked, or like then like comic books and stuff weren't as big as they are now, for all the Marvel films and stuff. And it was kind of one of those things where the more you do it, the more you get used to not really speaking out about things, and you're just used to not talking about it. And I was kind of wondering, do you have anyone you specifically speak to for kind of advice, whether it's parents or siblings or relationships, anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. My mom is like the, closest person in my life. And anytime I'm like stuck or just, just need some advice. Yeah. And both my parents, I feel really lucky. I'm close with both of them. But yeah, especially talking to my mom or my girlfriend, Lauren, who I live with, and we can just be super like open and honest about that. So I do feel really lucky to have that support. And I think it's important to like recognize the friends and people in our life who, you know, it's sometimes easy to take it for granted, but those are the type of people that will make you a better person. And I think we have to like really take a look at ourselves and take a look at our life. And I think quarantine has shown even more of a light on this, but look at who are the people in our life who make us better and make us feel good. Because a lot of life, you know, before this, for a lot of people, it's like seeking, you know, validation or whatever from people who don't make our lives better or make us feel good about ourselves.
Yeah.
Being honest with yourself, like who makes me feel good about myself and who makes my life better versus like who makes me fucking miserable. But you know, you're still trying to like force to like make something work. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it is. It's funny because I really relate back to kind of the fact of when we first went into it, who did I really speak to on a daily basis? And I feel like those are the people that you're really attached to. Whereas probably a month or so before, I wouldn't really. I'd have probably took that for granted because I'd have thought, oh, I could speak to that person or that person, but I'd never really go to them. And it
Mhm.
really opened my eyes when obviously you can't see them face to face, who you really have that kind of connection with, whether it's friends or not. And I'm the same as you. Like I'm really close to my mum as well. So she wanted to say a big shout out to you as well for your music because she said she hears it when she's in the shower. So she knows all the. I had the songs on yesterday and she knew 13 out of 14. I was like, oh, I'm going to have to kind of change some of the songs that I'm putting on. And so yeah, I give her a shout out. And I got a question from a listener actually, and they were talking about, and we can link it together. They were talking about long-term and short-term goals, and I was kind of wondering for you, do you have somewhere that you could see yourself in 5 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, I would really love to like keep producing and be mixing more. That's something that I've really like, you know, it's funny because I spent the last like 7 years of my life recording in studios with all these like amazing producers, but I was so, you know, focused on like the songs that I wasn't really paying attention to like what the engineer was doing, the producer, how the type of mics placement, like what kind of EQ and compression were they using. And I look back, I'm like, I wish I was paying attention to more of that stuff because I've really enjoyed like learning how to do all that and like mix and do all that on my own. So that's something I'd really love to continue doing. Continue the workshop, working with people, writing, producing, mixing. You know, I have like 10 or 12 clients now at this point, and different genres, like working on some like super like metally, like Every Time I Die stuff, to like working with a rapper, to doing my like singer songwriter stuff, to working with some pop punk bands. So that's super cool, and I like having that variety, and I like being involved in like the songwriting and then making those songs sound the way that they're supposed to. So I would love to continue to grow the workshop. I would love to continue making music in whatever group or capacity that is, because it's just something that like has, since I was 12 or 13, has just been like, this is just what I need to be doing, and just finding a way to do it. So yeah, I don't know exactly what that'll look like in 5 years, but I do know that I'll continue down that road and I'm not going to stop.
Yeah, yeah. I was
But
that's actually led in really well to the point I was going to make of long-term goals. I think sometimes you can get set on something, and if things aren't working out that way, it can really dishearten you. And I feel like, especially when you're young as well. And I know I had a question from when you were like, people were saying, obviously my age, they're saying like when they're comparing people when they've got houses and stuff at my age and they're getting engaged and stuff. And like I say, everyone's different and everyone has a different path. You might not find, for me, like if you say you're not enjoying something, you might not find that perfect thing for another year, like 10 years time. But even for me, that'd be only like mid 30s. So, you know, that you're not old, you're not like 60 odd, you know, it's just, take it as it comes because everyone's different anyway, and everyone has different interests. And again, I was wondering, would you have any advice for anyone? Obviously, because when you're in a band and stuff, you had other jobs, didn't you, when you were in the band and as like the part-time kind of thing? And do you have any advice for someone like young who really wants to kind of get into the music industry and how they would go about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a lot of great points, and like everybody's sort of in their own lane, headed, their own goal. There's the golden ring at the end of the lane, and everybody gets there at like a different time and at their own pace. So I think like it's really important to not like compare yourself or your pace to like somebody else or like another group or another band or something. And that's hard to do, right? Like that's just like our natural instinct. But if you're putting in the work and you're like moving forward and progressing, that's the most important thing. So you can't set like I need to like, it's hard because you want to have goals, but you can't be like I need to have X amount of like monthly listeners by this date or something. The goals have to sort of like come from within, and I think like short-term goals that lead to a long-term goal is usually the best way to do it. For somebody who's like just starting off, I think that you have to be prepared to go all in, being involved in every aspect, and especially now, just the way that like the industry is like you have to be aware of every aspect of your career and putting in the work on all fronts. And once shows come back, once touring comes back, that means like putting in the work, paying your dues, and not getting like discouraged if there's a setback, because when it comes down to it, it's you got to have patience, and good things take time.
Yeah. I was going to say with anything, there's going to be setbacks. Like you don't just get a job and then you're a manager in like a month's time. There's going to be like the ups and downs as well. And I feel like if you have those setbacks when you reach the end goal, it feels even better than if you hadn't experienced them, because you have a different outlook. And I said, like with anything, like with confidence and being yourself and stuff, like we all know when you've had those kind of like dark moments or sad moments where you really don't have any energy, when you have the energy and you're feeling good about yourself, you feel 10 times better. And it's just amazing to see, because you can take them as two sides. You can either dwell on them or you can take them as learning experiences, and that's kind of what I learned. But the long way of like 6 or 7 years of stuff of like constant worrying, like sleepless nights and stuff, because it all has like a domino effect of if you don't get enough sleep, then you're tired through the day, you're edgy, you're grumpy, and it makes it worse, because you get like that kind of, you get a routine of it. So I feel like kind of when you get the learning experience from them, if you do come across it again, you might still feel down, but you know that you can get through it. So like you say, with anything in life, you've just got to kind of crack on, do the best you can, and see what happens from there. And just to end off with this one, I always do kind of a segment, and it's called if you had to choose three. So I'll go through some categories, and you just have to name out your three like favorite things from that kind of topic. So the first one we'll go through is three fast food items. So if you had to pick three fast food items, or like just any kind of restaurants near you, what would you go for?
That's a good one. So I think the first one would be there's a place in Chicago called Portillo's, and it's sort of fast food-y, but it's like better quality. But it's like a Chicago institution. So anybody from Chicago, if they watch this, they'll know exactly what Portillo's is. But yeah, so a burger and cheese fries and Coke from Portillo's is like the best thing ever. That would be number one. Number two would probably be a Crunchwrap Supreme from Taco Bell, but I like the potato instead of the meat, which they took potatoes away, but they just came back. So potatoes are back, which is sick. So Crunchwrap with potato. And then the third one would be probably Chick-fil-A, something from like the grilled chicken sandwich with the waffle fries. It's like top tier fast food. So those would probably be my
Yeah,
three go-to answers.
it's funny because the last person I had on, Matt, he said about Taco Bell not having the potatoes and they brought them back. So it must have been a big shock when they were gone and people wanted them back. And
it's probably just a marketing ploy, like looking back at it, but it's kind of genius because everybody's talking about it like, holy shit, the potatoes are back. They're only gone for like 3 months. It's like, okay.
And the next one was 3 drinks, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic. What would you be go to for your 3 drinks?
Ooh, yeah, sort of. I guess it sort of depends on my mood, but like my go-to like initial gut reaction would be number one, a whiskey soda, which is just like my go-to drink on the road because it's like not too heavy and low calorie and doesn't have all the sugar and shit. So that's cool. Um, Number two would be I guess like a pint of something. Are you drinking a pint right now?
I'm drinking a Guinness.
A Guinness. I was gonna say I've had more Guinness this week than I've had like in
Same.
months.
I'm going through it
Uh,
now.
yeah. So we'll say a pint of Guinness as my second, and then number three, dude. Honestly, just a nice glass of water, straight up, room temperature. I'm like a room temperature water guy. I can't drink water cold because I like to just chug
Oh.
it. So I know I'm weird. My girlfriend just is like, "What is wrong with you?" I think it might be from touring because they would just give us like the bottles of water and I would just like chug. So I can't chug like ice cold water. So I'm just gonna say a nice glass of room temperature water.
Great.
Real crazy.
The next one I've got is 3 movies. 3 movies that you could select. So if you were recommending 3 movies, what would you go for?
Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, The Godfather, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Great. They're clearly ones that you just stick straight on. So that was great.
Yep.
And 3 music artists that you kind of will go for listening to at the moment. Any kind of people that you're vibing with now?
Yeah, there's this group that I've been listening to called The Brook and the Bluff, I think they're called. Something like that. I'm like obsessed with. I just discovered them on like a playlist. They put out an album in like 2019. So good. So them. Been listening to. God, what else have I been listening to? Well, I was listening to a lot of Bad Sons the past year. They're an awesome group, and then I guess like been listening to like Phoebe Bridgers. I actually really like her project with Connor Oberst, the Better Oblivion Community Center. So those are my 3.
Amazing. And the last one is 3 destinations to visit. You can either have been there before or if you want to go. So I know you mentioned Japan. Is that going to be one of them?
Japan Japan is probably number 1. I've been to Tokyo, but I want to see the rest of the country, especially like Kyoto and Osaka. So we'll say Japan. I really want to go to Croatia. I think Croatia looks really sick. It's like on the water, just amazing food. I feel like it's also like an underrated destination. So we'll say Croatia, and then third, France. I really want to go to France. I haven't been yet.
Amazing. So that's kind of wrapped everything up with the if you had to choose 3. So just to end off the podcast, TJ, is there anything that you want to say to the listeners? People either go sometimes motivational or as just an insight to kind of your music. Anything you want to leave the podcast off with?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Ben, for having me. It's really fun and you're a great dude. And so appreciate being here. Let's say anybody listening, if you're struggling being creative right now, I think having some self-forgiveness and patience, it's normal and it's totally okay. And we're all going through it right now. So you're definitely not alone in feeling, out of it. But yeah, if you want, go listen to my new project, Oslo. Just put out a song called If You Were Here, Then I'd Be Home, on Spotify and all that good stuff. And yeah, keep on keeping on. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks everyone for listening. So we'll end it there. So thanks everyone again.